For nearly 30 years, Hideo Kojima and his team were hard at work on the Metal Gear series, definitive entries in the stealth action genre and pioneers of complex video game storytelling. But after decades of plot twists and retcons, it's pretty hard to follow what's actually going on without a huge whiteboard and like 50 pages of notes. Luckily, you've got me to do all the work for you. Today I'll be explaining the story of Kojima's entire Metal Gear series. That's Metal Gear 1 and 2, Metal Gear Solid 1 through 5, and Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. I won't be covering games that Kojima himself didn't write and direct, like Portable Ops or Metal Gear Rising, because it's kind of ambiguous how canon those games are. And I will be telling the story in the order that it happens, which will make way more sense than jumping around the timeline in the order the games were released. Let's get started. The events of the Metal Gear series date back to the end of World War I, when a group of 12 wealthy and powerful men from the US, Soviet Union, and China come together and form a secret group called the Philosophers. The Philosophers' goal is to use their influence to try and prevent future wars like the one that had just ended. But by the late 1930s, the original members of the Philosophers have all died and been replaced with new members. Over time, the Philosophers lose their founding principles and begin to control world events for their own selfish reasons. This generation of philosophers pools together a fortune of around $100 billion. This fortune is called the Philosopher's Legacy, and it's used to finance a bunch of military projects, including experimentation with superhuman soldiers. In World War II, some of these super soldiers are assembled into Cobra Unit, a team led by the Joy, who will later be called the Boss. During the war, the Joy gives birth via C-section to a child fathered by another Cobra member, the Sorrow. This baby, named Adamska, is quickly taken away from her by the Philosophers. During the war, tensions rise between the Philosophers' three branches, leading to their eventual split into separate factions after the war ends. In this chaos, a Russian officer named Boris Volgin manages to steal the Philosopher's Legacy. Meanwhile, the Boss disbands Cobra Unit, and around 1950, she meets a young man named John, who we'll know later as Naked Snake or Big Boss. They work together as agents for the US for nearly a decade, until she's sent away on some other top-secret missions. The details of these missions aren't very important, but she eventually comes face-to-face with her former lover, the Sorrow. As revenge for the Boss's American espionage, the Soviet branch of the Philosophers force the two ex-lovers to fight to the death, threatening to kill their lost child if they don't. The two agree that the Sorrow should be the one to die, and the Boss reluctantly shoots him. Boris Volgin eventually passes the Philosopher's Legacy onto his son, Colonel Yevgeny Volgin. Colonel Volgin uses the funds to support an anti-Khrushchev extremist faction. He builds a base called Groznychgrad and funds a scientist named Alexander Granin, who's planning a walking bipedal tank called Metal Gear. Volgin also has lightning powers. That part isn't really explained ever, but it is cool as fuck. Unfortunately, Granin's Metal Gear proposal isn't quite working out yet. He's overshadowed by another scientist, Nikolai Sokolov, who's being forced by the Soviet government to finish his prototype for the Shagohod, a tank capable of launching nuclear missiles worldwide. So, by 1964, everyone wants to get their hands on Sokolov, which brings us to the main events of Metal Gear Solid 3. Hoping to recover Sokolov, the CIA allows the Boss and an old colleague of hers named Major Zero to assemble a new covert ops group called Fox. The Boss and Major Zero recruit John, now codenamed Naked Snake, as their first field operative, and send him into the USSR on an operation called Virtuous Mission, with help from a medical advisor called Paramedic. Snake finds Sokolov, but is seemingly betrayed by the Boss, who claims to have defected to Colonel Volgin's group along with the rest of a now reunited Cobra Unit. In reality, the Boss is only pretending to defect. She's infiltrating Volgin's organization on US orders to recover the Philosopher's Legacy. But Snake doesn't know that, and he thinks the betrayal is for real. Volgin recovers Sokolov and his Shagohod prototype, as well as some US-made mini-nuclear missiles, a gift from the Boss to gain his trust. All of this was also secretly planned, but the plan goes wrong when Volgin suddenly decides to fire one of the missiles at Sokolov's old research facility and basically frame the US for it. Because of this, Virtuous Mission ends with the US and USSR on the brink of all-out war. A week later, the US sends Snake back into the field in Operation Snake Eater, with the help of Major Zero, Paramedic, and a weapons and gadget expert named Sigint. Snake's mission is to destroy the Shagohod and eliminate Volgin, Cobra Unit, and the Boss. The Boss isn't actually a traitor, remember, but after Volgin's unexpected destruction, the CIA just decides to kill her anyway and blame her for the whole thing. Though he doesn't know it, Snake is also supposed to recover the Philosopher's legacy from the boss before he kills her. 2 other agents are given orders to help Snake complete his mission, Adam and Eva. Adam happens to be the boss's long-lost child, Adamska, who now operates under the name Ocelot. Ocelot works for Volgin, while secretly taking orders from both the American and the Soviet philosophers, who are both working against Volgin. I know this triple agent stuff can be kind of confusing, but get used to that, because that's pretty much Ocelot's thing. And Eva's even worse. The real Eva never shows up, for reasons that are never explained, but his identity is stolen by this woman. So when I say Eva from now on, I mean her. This Eva is working for China under orders to get them the Philosopher's legacy. So she had infiltrated Sokolov's base before Virtuous Mission, posing as a KGB agent under the name Tatiana. She was intentionally captured by Volgin during Virtuous Mission, but she told him she was Sokolov's lover and managed to convince him she was pretty much harmless. Snake meets Eva early in Operation Snake Eater, and she again claims to be a KGB operative sent to help him. Since Eva reached Snake first, Adam stays fully undercover. Through a complicated series of events, basically most of Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake eliminates Cobra Unit, destroys the Shagohod, and seemingly kills Volgin. In the process, he loses an eye to Ocelot while trying to protect Tatiana, who he doesn't realize is Eva due to her disguise. Despite losing the eye, Snake forms something of a friendly rivalry with Ocelot over the course of the operation. Snake and Eva also fall in love, but that's not going to stop her from betraying him in the end. With most of Operation Snake Eater completed, Snake has one final task: to eliminate the boss. They come face to face one final time, and the boss tells him about her vision of the world. She reveals that her father was one of the original philosophers, and that she knows all of their secrets. She explains how the philosophers have lost their way and are caught in a cycle of endless war and power grabbing. After a life of battle and espionage, having her sons stolen from her, and repeatedly being used for evil ends, she's just fed up with things. And she has a vision of a united, peaceful world, free from betrayal and conflict. This is a pretty vague dream, to be fair, and a bunch of idiots misinterpreting it is pretty much the plot of the series from this point forward. She tells Snake to make their final battle the best of their lives. Snake wins, and she passes him the microfilm containing the Philosopher's legacy before he reluctantly finishes her off. After a friendly duel with Ocelot, Snake makes it to an Alaska safe house along with Eva, and they spend the night together. Snake wakes up to find Eva missing, and a recorded message left behind. In the message, she explains that she was really a Chinese operative, and that she's taken the Philosopher's legacy. Strangely enough, Snake finds the legacy microfilm still in his pocket. This is because Ocelot had actually suspected Eva of being a spy, and at some point had planted a fake microfilm on Snake. Eva stole the fake, so Snake still has the real one. Eva also explains that she'd spoken to the boss during the mission, and had promised her that she wouldn't kill him. She reveals the true details of the boss's mission, how she was loyal to the very end, sacrificing herself for peace, knowing she'd be remembered by history as a villain. Snake would be pretty much the only one to know the truth. When Snake makes it back to Washington, he's given praise, awards, and the title of Big Boss, but he doesn't really care. He heads to the boss's grave and gives her one final salute. Driven by the boss's vision, her old friend Major Zero reorganizes the American philosophers in 1970 into a new group called the Patriots. He recruits his Fox colleagues Big Boss, Paramedic, and Sigint, along with Ocelot and Eva, as founding members of this new cabal hoping to fulfill the boss's dream. In 71, Big Boss forms a Black Ops unit of the army called Foxhound, a successor to Fox. During this time, Zero uses his connections to prop up Big Boss as a heroic figure for the world to follow, though Big Boss starts to resent this celebrity status. But it quickly becomes clear that the two have very different interpretations of the boss's will. Zero thinks that a united world means a world controlled by one group, while Big Boss thinks that she just wanted a world where soldiers wouldn't be used as tools. Afraid that Big Boss will leave the group, Zero secretly begins a project in 72 called Les Enfants Terribles, where he clones Big Boss to create possible replacements for this heroic figure. Paramedic first manages to create 2 successful clones, one with Big Boss's dominant genes and one with his recessive. Eva acts as the surrogate mother for the twins, named Eli and David, who will later be called Liquid and Solid Snake. The project also makes a 3rd clone without as much gene tampering, who will later be called Solidus Snake. We don't know as much about where Solidus comes from, but Eva isn't the surrogate mother. Anyway, Big Boss finds out about Les Enfants Terribles, which is ironically what causes him to leave the Patriots. Eva leaves too, while Ocelot stays behind to spy for the two of them. With Big Boss gone, the Patriots rename themselves Cypher and become increasingly power-hungry. Meanwhile, Big Boss starts a group of soldiers for hire called Militaires Sans Frontières, or MSF, meaning Military Without Borders. He meets another traveling soldier in late 1972 named Kazuhira Miller, who becomes his second-in-command. Big Boss doesn't really like his title, and asks to be called Snake by those close to him. MSF continues to grow, leading us to the Peace Walker incident. In 1974, Snake and Kaz are approached by two supposed members of a UN organization called the University for Peace. They introduce themselves as Ramon Galvez Mena and Paz Ortega Andrade, but in true Metal Gear fashion, they're both double agents, which I'll get to in a second. They tell Snake about a mysterious security force, Peace Sentinel, that has invaded Costa Rica, and ask for their help. Peace Sentinel is a unit led by a CIA official named Hot Cold Man, who happens to be the guy who came up with the whole kill the boss thing back in '64. Cold Man and Peace Sentinel are in Costa Rica working on the Peace Walker Project, an initiative to make AI-controlled combat vehicles inspired by the now-dead Alexander Granin's designs for Metal Gear. Leading the project are Dr. Huey Emmerich, a former admiring colleague of Granin's, and Dr. Strangelove, an AI expert and former colleague of the boss. Strangelove had been in love with the boss before her death, and is modeling one of the AI systems off of her, basically trying to recreate her mind to find out more about the mysteries that surround her death. The Peace Walker project makes 4 AI-controlled vehicles, one of which is Peace Walker itself, which is equipped with a nuclear missile that its AI would launch automatically in retaliation for an incoming nuclear attack. Galvez and Paz play a recording that sounds like the boss's voice, which makes Snake curious enough to get involved. Of course, it's only a recording of the incomplete boss AI, but Snake doesn't know about any of that yet. Galvez, whose real name is Vladimir Zadornov, is actually a KGB agent using MSF to take down the CIA's new weapons. Paz, meanwhile, is actually working for Cypher, but that won't come up until later. Over the course of the mission, Snake destroys 3 of the 4 AI pods with help from the local Sandinista revolutionaries, while building up MSF's new offshore facility, Mother Base. With only Peace Walker left standing, Hot Cold Man moves to his final phase. Cold Man wants to show off how cool and powerful Peace Walker is, so he tricks the AI into thinking it needs to nuke Mother Base. But Zadornov shoots Cold Man and changes Peace Walker's target to Cuba, hoping to blame the US for the attack and foster anti-American sentiment in South America to help the Soviet Union win the Cold War. He also wants Snake dead so that he can be a revolutionary figure and a martyr along the lines of Che Guevara. Suddenly, the Sandinistas, refusing to be KGB puppets, rush in along with MSF and capture Zadornov. Hot Cold Man, nearly dead from his gunshot wound, decides to just activate Peace Walker anyways, even though it's still pointed at Cuba, just to show off that his machine actually works. But the boss AI inside Peace Walker decides to destroy itself, sinking into the lake to prevent the launch. Upon seeing the boss sacrifice herself yet again, Snake tosses away her old bandana and finally claims the title Big Boss as his own, promising that he, as the next boss, will never surrender and let himself die. He'll fight until his dying breath. He becomes sure of his goal, to create a place where soldiers can be free from the manipulations of any government. For now, Mother Base will be that home. With Peace Walker, Hot Cold Man, and Zadornov all eliminated, Big Boss returns to Mother Base, with Emmerich and Strangelove both recruited to MSF. They start developing Metal Gear Zeke, which Big Boss agrees to arm with the recovered nuke, at Kazuhira Miller's suggestion. Once Zeke is completed, Paz hijacks it and reveals herself as an agent of Cypher, real name Pacifica Ocean. Turns out Zero actually wanted MSF to expand, hoping that Big Boss would eventually rejoin Cypher. Zero wants MSF to fight anyone who challenges his new world order, while distracting people from his plot to take over the world's intelligence agencies. But Big Boss refuses to rejoin Cypher, so Pacifica targets the US with Metal Gear Zeke's nuke, hoping to frame MSF for the attack. Big Boss manages to take her down and destroy Zeke. Afterwards, Kaz admits that he knew Paz and Galvez were up to no good, but he completed their mission anyways, to expand MSF. A risky plan, but I guess it all worked out in the end, because MSF now has a full base of operations, plenty of new recruits, and a growing reputation. But a year later, in 1975, things go wrong yet again when a new villain appears, Skullface. Skullface is the leader of XOF, a covert support team that's been secretly working under Zero since the Fox days back in the 60s. But Skullface isn't really loyal to Zero, and wants to take control of Cypher for himself. He discovers that Paz is still alive and captures her, hoping to interrogate her for info about Zero's location. Big Boss hears about this and realizes that Paz's knowledge could be useful to him too. But he doesn't have time to deal with it right now, because the UN suspects MSF of having a nuke and are sending a team to investigate. Big Boss clears out the civilians and lots of the rowdier soldiers from other base to try and prevent the UN from discovering the now rebuilt Metal Gear Zeke. One of the people he clears out is Chico, a child soldier from back in the Peace Walker incident. While off base, Chico tries to go rescue Paz himself, because he's 13 and stupid. He obviously fails and gets captured too. So Big Boss and Kaz go to rescue Chico and Paz while the UN investigation takes place. They manage to get the two out, and the UN doesn't discover Zeke or its nuke. But suddenly, Mother Base is attacked by XOF, who set up the whole UN investigation in the first place. The base is entirely destroyed. Emmerich is captured, and pretty much every soldier is killed while Big Boss is away. Paz reveals she has a bomb inside her and jumps out of the helicopter. But she jumps too late, and the explosion causes the chopper to crash, killing Chico and placing both Big Boss and an unnamed combat medic in a coma. MSF has lost their base, their leader, their chief scientist, many of their members, and Paz, their last tie to Zero. Skullface is pretty good at this shit. Despite being on opposite sides, Zero still considers Big Boss to be some weird sort of friend to him. Plus, he sees the value of Big Boss as a heroic figure, and hopes that they could still help each other fulfill the boss's dream. So Zero comes up with a plan to protect him for a while. He keeps the comatose Big Boss in a secret hospital, along with the comatose medic, with Ocelot keeping guard. The medic is given intensive surgery and hypnotherapy to look and think like Big Boss. This so-called Phantom, Venom Snake, is going to replace Big Boss as the public hero, while the actual Big Boss can work behind the scenes on his own projects. A year later, Skullface finds Zero, having successfully learned his location from Paz, and poisons him with a parasite that Cypher has been creating. Zero's health gets really bad really fast. He goes fully into hiding, now unfit to lead Cypher, and Skullface absorbs the organization into XOF. In 1984, after 9 years in a coma, the real Big Boss wakes up, and Ocelot tells him about the plan for Venom Snake. Big Boss agrees to the plan, so when Venom Snake is woken up days later, he has no idea that he's not the real Big Boss. Meanwhile, another comatose man gets a new life. Colonel Volgin, kept barely alive for 20 years thanks to his drive for revenge against Big Boss. A psychic child soldier named Treti Rebenok, who will later be called Psycho Mantis, can sense Volgin's rage and is drawn to him because of it. Feeding off the strong emotions, Rebenok uses his abilities to reanimate Volgin as the Man on Fire, and the two set out to get revenge on Big Boss. Shortly after Snake wakes up, the hospital is attacked by an assassin called Quiet, working for Skullface. Big Boss, disguised with bandages and calling himself Ishmael, protects Venom Snake, and the two escape the hospital as it's taken over by XOF forces looking for Big Boss. During their escape, they also encounter Rebenok and the Man on Fire. Still, the two manage to escape and are recovered by Ocelot. Big Boss leaves to prepare his next plan, while Venom Snake goes with Ocelot to the new Mother Base, home to MSF's successor, Diamond Dogs. Snake rescues Kazuhira Miller from XOF's elite super soldier team, Parasite Unit, and accepts his role as the new leader of Diamond Dogs. He takes on a variety of missions, expanding Mother Base and spreading the legend of Big Boss in the process. Over the course of these missions, Snake captures the assassin Quiet, repeatedly takes on Parasite Unit, and encounters Rebenok and the Man on Fire yet again, who are now working for Skullface since Rebenok can feed off of his hatred too. He also meets a belligerent child soldier named Eli, who, if you're keeping track, is one of Big Boss's clones. Eli has somehow figured out that he's a clone of Big Boss and hates him because he feels like he can't form his own path. So when Snake shows up and takes Eli away from the child militia he was leading, he feels like Big Boss has robbed him of his identity even further, so he is not happy. Another mission worth mentioning is the recovery of Huey Emmerich, who is forced by Skullface to work on a new Metal Gear called Philosophers and smaller mechs called Walker Gears. After rescuing Huey, Snake and Kaz interrogate him. They find it kinda suspicious that he survived the attack in 75, so they suspect that he knew all along that the UN investigation was a setup, and that he defected to Skullface on purpose. Huey denies it, but they still keep him locked up. In later missions, a parasite epidemic created by Skullface begins to spread through the base. These parasites infest the vocal cords, but only become active if their host speaks a certain language. After rescuing Code Talker, the biologist in charge of the parasite project, Snake manages to get the epidemic under control. With Diamond Dogs back to full health, he decides they're finally ready to take XOF on directly. Snake infiltrates the base and comes face to face with Skullface, who gives an evil villain monologue explaining why he hates Zero. His cultural identity was stolen from him as a child by constant takeovers of his homeland, Hungary. He feels that Zero's vision of a unified world would destroy individuality and culture, so instead of unity, he wants chaos. He plans to unleash the vocal cord parasite to kill all English speakers. He also wants to distribute nuclear-armed walker gears worldwide to even the playing field between superpower nations and small revolutionaries. He'll show off Philanthropus as a potential threat, incentivizing the world to buy the walker gears. After explaining all this, Skullface tells Rebenok to have the man on fire finish Snake off. But Rebenok senses someone with hatred even stronger than Volgan's and Skullface's, Eli, deployed on a support helicopter nearby. Rebenok can feel Eli's rage, so he forces the man on fire to kill himself and psychically partners up with Eli instead. Eli and Rebenok take control of Philanthropus and go on a destructive rampage. Snake eventually manages to incapacitate the machine, and Skullface is crushed in rubble during the battle. Huey finishes him off, and they head back to Mother Base along with Eli, Rebenok, and the now inoperable Philanthropus. Afterwards, Snake goes on many more missions, gradually gaining more understanding of what's happened so far. He discovers the truth about Emmerich. He didn't work alone. Huey created Philanthropus along with Strangelove, who had quit MSF before it was destroyed. The two fell in love and had a child, Hal, but since Strangelove's AI pod was too small for an adult pilot, Huey tried using Hal as a test pilot, even though he was like 4. This led to a huge fight between Huey and Strangelove. She sent Hal to America so Huey couldn't endanger him anymore, so Huey murdered her by trapping her in the pod. Snake also discovers that he and Kaz were right. Huey had allowed Skullface to destroy MSF to save himself. They hold a trial, and many Diamond Dogs want Huey killed, but Snake instead exiles him on a life raft with enough food and water to make it to shore. Huey eventually reunites with his son Hal. Another event that's probably worth mentioning is Eli and Rebenok's escape from Mother Base along with a stolen Philanthropus. The two fly away to go remake Eli's Legion of Child Soldiers. It's not really clear what happens to Philanthropus after this, since the mission that resolves this plotline got cut from the final game, so it isn't canon. But in canon, we can probably still assume that Philanthropus later gets destroyed by Diamond Dogs. Over the course of his missions, Venom Snake's hypnotherapy begins to wear off, and he realizes he's not the original Big Boss, only a phantom. But he understands the importance of the legend, especially after receiving a recorded message from the original Big Boss, and he decides to keep up the lie. Kaz, on the other hand, feels betrayed by his old friend, and tells Ocelot he'll do whatever it takes to bring the real Big Boss's downfall. He keeps up appearances for a while before eventually leaving Diamond Dogs. With Skullface dead and Zero unable to lead, Cypher is gradually put under the control of an AI system that was started by Strangelove and finished by Donald Anderson, the man once known as Sigyn. These AIs, referred to as the Patriots, begin taking control of the US government from behind the scenes. Over the next decade, Big Boss continues his plan to form a small nation called Outer Heaven, a home for soldiers to be free from their governments. But he keeps his identity secret. All that the world knows is that the nation's leader is a legendary mercenary. To keep suspicion away from him, and to act as a double agent, Big Boss rejoins the US and takes back command of Foxhound, his old Black Ops unit from his days with the Patriots. He recruits a man named David, who he knows is one of his clones, and gives him the title Solid Snake. Snake has no idea he's a clone, but he forms a strong relationship with his new commander. By 1995, Outer Heaven is getting pretty strong. Most of Diamond Dogs have presumably been folded into the nation, and plenty of new soldiers have joined too. Venom Snake is there to act as the nation's leader, while Big Boss is in the US. But word gets out that a powerful weapon is being built in the country, so Big Boss sends his Foxhound unit, expecting them to fail the mission. First, he sends an agent called Gray Fox, who discovers the weapon, the TX-55 Metal Gear, but he gets captured, so they send in Solid Snake after him on his very first Foxhound mission. Snake manages to rescue Gray Fox, and with help from this Metal Gear's reluctant creator, Dr. Madnar, he finds the weapon and sets explosives to destroy it. But as the mission proceeds, Big Boss starts giving intentionally bad advice to delay Snake's progress. Finally, Snake comes face to face with Outer Heaven's leader, who reveals himself as Big Boss. He wanted Snake to gather a bunch of false info, but Snake was just too good at his job, and had messed up the plan. Now, remember, the guy who's at Outer Heaven in person is actually Venom Snake, not Big Boss, but Solid Snake doesn't know about any of that. Solid and Venom fight, Venom is killed, and Solid escapes the base before it explodes. Now that he's faked his death thanks to Venom, the real Big Boss goes into hiding and starts working on his next plan. Gray Fox leaves Foxhound and joins Big Boss out of loyalty and respect to his former commander. Over the next few years, Big Boss and his mercenaries help out with a revolution in Zanzibar land, a country somewhere in Central Asia. Big Boss is revered as a hero and becomes the president of the country, though the rest of the world doesn't know it's him. Zanzibar land is basically his replacement for Outer Heaven, a paradise for soldiers. They build a new weapon, Metal Gear D, and start stealing nuclear weapons from around the world. In 1999, they kidnap Dr. Kyo Marv, an energy scientist who's just come up with an incredible solution for the world's current oil crisis. This is the last straw, so Foxhound's new commander, Colonel Roy Campbell, sends in Solid Snake to handle things, with extra radio assistance from Kazuhira Miller, who's now a survival consultant for the team. Snake manages to recover the data about Dr. Marv's discovery, though he finds Marv dead. He eventually finds out that Big Boss is still alive and leading Zanzibar land. Big Boss also tells Snake he's his father, but he doesn't really elaborate past that. Snake destroys Metal Gear D and defeats both Gray Fox and Big Boss, with both now presumed dead. Neither of them really are. This is Metal Gear after all. The Patriots secretly recover both bodies, and turn a dying Gray Fox into a cyborg ninja, and put Big Boss into a coma using nanomachines. With Big Boss out of the picture, his legacy falls to his sons, Solid, Liquid, and Solidus. Solid Snake and Colonel Campbell leave Foxhound, and Liquid joins a year later. The Patriots, now fully AI-controlled and with total power over the US government, choose Solidus as the next US president, under the name George Sears. Meanwhile, Ocelot and Eva are hatching a plan. They're still enemies of the Patriots, loyal to Big Boss's dream. With the help of Gray Fox and his adopted sister, Naomi Hunter, they kill Paramedic in 2003, leaving Donald Anderson, aka Sigint, as the only other founder of the Patriots still active. But Ocelot, the ultimate quadruple agent, joins Foxhound along with Liquid, pretending yet again to be loyal to the Patriots. He helps elevate Liquid to leadership of Foxhound, and Liquid becomes an icon nearly on par with Big Boss. Meanwhile, a company called ArmsTech is developing Metal Gear Rex for the US government and the Patriots on an island called Shadow Moses. Leading development is Hal Emmerich, Huey's son. Huey committed suicide years before after finding his second wife cheating on him with a teenage Hal. Now an adult, Hal works on the new Metal Gear only because he's been told it won't have nukes, which is a complete lie. Solidus has started to hate the Patriots for manipulating him, and wants to cause a bunch of chaos so he can steal Rex's data and its nuclear warhead to use against them. Ocelot also hates the Patriots, so he agrees to help Solidus with his plan. In 2005, Ocelot manipulates Liquid into betraying the US and taking over Shadow Moses using Foxhound and their Genome Army, a group of experimental soldiers who were genetically modified with some of Big Boss's DNA. Liquid and the Genome Soldiers, calling themselves the Sons of Big Boss, demand Big Boss's corpse from the US so that they can study it and treat a genetic disorder that they're experiencing. Liquid also hopes to turn Shadow Moses into a new Outer Heaven. They take some hostages, including Donald Anderson, and threaten to nuke the US if they don't hand the body over. Ocelot accidentally kills Anderson while torturing him, knocking another original Patriot out of commission. So, quick recap. Ocelot is working with Solidus because they both hate the Patriots. He's pretending to work for Liquid so he can manipulate him into causing chaos, and he's using the whole mess to get rid of Sigint. US intelligence predicts Liquid's takeover shortly before it happens, and they want Colonel Campbell and Solid Snake on the mission to stop him. So they position Meryl Silverberg, Campbell's niece, at Shadow Moses right before the attack. She gets captured, which lets them manipulate Campbell into accepting the mission. Well, Meryl's actually Campbell's daughter from a secret affair he had with his brother's wife, but that's not that important. Anyways, Campbell and Snake reluctantly agreed to the Shadow Moses mission, and Snake sent in, with help from Naomi Hunter and a few other advisors, to rescue the hostages and to figure out if Liquid is bluffing about his threat to nuke the US. Turns out, he is. Liquid needs codes from both ArmsTech President Kenneth Baker and Donald Anderson in order to activate Rex's nuke. He tried to get the info out of them using his old friend Psycho Mantis, but they've got implants to resist mind reading. And now that Ocelot has killed Anderson, they won't be able to get the code through torture either. So they decide to manipulate Solid Snake into activating Rex with another method, tricking him into thinking he's shutting it down. A Foxhound member named Decoy Octopus impersonates Anderson and tricks Snake into the mission before suddenly dying of a heart attack. See, the Patriots want all records of Metal Gear Rex erased, so they had Naomi Hunter secretly inject Snake with a nanomachine virus called FoxDie before the mission started. FoxDie is specifically targeted to infect and kill specific members of Foxhound like Decoy Octopus, as well as ArmsTech president Kenneth Baker, because he just knows too much. Once Snake gets close enough to spread it to them, they'll have a heart attack, usually within a few minutes. Naomi also made an alteration so that it'll eventually kill Snake too, as revenge for nearly killing her adopted brother Gray Fox back in '99. Snake finds Meryl and comes face to face with Ocelot, but they're interrupted by the appearance of the reconstructed Gray Fox, who cuts off Ocelot's hand. After years of experiments, Gray Fox has forgotten most of his original identity, but he still hates Snake for nearly killing him and wants to duel him. But his cyborg parts keep acting up, so he retreats. Over the course of the mission, he also gives Snake advice under the name Deep Throat, hoping to keep him alive long enough for their duel. On their second meeting, Snake manages to figure out his identity by recognizing his fighting style, but Fox retreats yet again. Snake also meets Kenneth Baker, who quickly dies thanks to the FoxDie virus, and Hal Emmerich, who agrees to help him destroy Rex under the codename Otacon. He eliminates other Foxhound operatives, including Psycho Mantis, Sniper Wolf, and Vulcan Raven, while gradually learning more and more about the web of lies surrounding the mission. He also starts getting advice from Liquid, disguised as his old field advisor, Master Miller. Liquid killed the real Kazuhiro Miller a few days before the operation so that he could impersonate him. With manipulations from Liquid, Snake activates Rex's nuclear launch, and Liquid finally reveals himself and takes control of the Metal Gear. Suddenly, Gray Fox appears. He sets his revenge aside and helps Snake destroy Rex, though he's killed in the process. Finally, the twin Snakes are face to face with nothing but their fists. Liquid explains how they're both clones of Big Boss, and how one was given the dominant genes and one was given the recessive. Liquid thinks he has the recessive genes, which he thinks makes him inferior, and he wants to defeat Solid to prove himself. People still sometimes argue about this plot point, so read this stuff if you care. The twin Snakes have a fistfight atop the burning wreckage of Metal Gear Rex, which Solid wins by knocking Liquid into the flames below. Snake and Meryl escape, but are pursued by Liquid until he dies from the FoxDie virus. Knowing that he'll one day die from the virus too, Solid Snake goes off the grid, refusing to follow US orders any longer. The Shadow Moses incident was a mess for the Patriots, revealing top-secret projects like Metal Gear Rex and the Genome Soldiers to the public. So to punish Solidus for causing the whole thing, they remove him from the US presidency and claim he resigned. They're still willing to work with Ocelot, but it's not really clear why. Maybe they don't know how much he was involved in Shadow Moses, or maybe they just see him as more of an asset than a threat, despite his betrayal. But he's still working against them behind the scenes, and helps Solidus go into hiding. He also replaces his severed hand with Liquid's, and uses psychotherapy, hypnosis, drugs, and nanomachines to make himself think that the spirit of Liquid possesses him anytime he's around Solid Snake. He does this to trick the Patriots, so that he can work against them when Liquid is fronting, but pretend to still be on their side as Ocelot. Since the Patriots have dealt with Liquid before, they don't really see him as much of a threat, so Ocelot can just blame stuff on the other personality. Ocelot sells the Rex data he originally got for Solidus on the black market, causing a whole bunch of Metal Gear derivatives to be created worldwide. So Solid Snake and Otacon form a group called Philanthropy, dedicated to taking down any new Metal Gears. They hear some leaked info about Metal Gear Ray, created by the US Marines, and Arsenal Gear, created by the Navy. Arsenal Gear is the Patriots' next big project, an underwater, nuclear-equipped fortress with an AI called GW that can control internet communications to manipulate and censor the flow of information. But Metal Gear Ray isn't the Patriots' doing. The Marines are making that all on their own. So, in 2007, the Patriots decide to steal Ray for themselves, to reproduce it and use it to protect Arsenal Gear. They also want to deal with Philanthropy, so they decide to do both in one fell swoop. They make Otacon's stepsister Emma, GW's designer, leak info about Ray to Philanthropy, drawing Snake to infiltrate the tanker in the Hudson River that's carrying the mech. At the same time, they send Ocelot to take over the tanker with the help of a Russian terrorist group, then betray them and steal Ray. Basically, the Patriots want to take the Metal Gear while framing Philanthropy for all the chaos. The Patriots' plan goes almost perfectly, but two things happen that they don't quite expect. First, Ocelot is seemingly possessed by Liquid Snake, But this doesn't really mess up the plan. He mostly just shouts a lot and then still does everything that he's supposed to. And second is Solid Snake's supposed demise. As things start going wrong, Snake decides to use the chaos of the sinking tanker to fake his death. He and Otacon drop Liquid's body, which they've recently stolen from the Patriots, into the river so that they can pretend that it's Solid's body. Solid Snake's death is especially great news to the Patriots. Things have gone even better than expected. After the incident, they quickly send a second tanker filled with oil and sink that one too, framing Philanthropy as eco-terrorists who've attacked the tanker to intentionally cause an oil spill. Snake and Otacon quickly go from heroes to villains in the world's eyes. Plus, it gives the Patriots a cover to build the enormous Arsenal gear by disguising it as an offshore oil cleanup facility called Big Shell. Over the next 2 years, the Patriots set up their next plan, and it's probably their craziest yet. The S3 plan, or Selection for Societal Sanity, is aimed to test GW's ability to control and manipulate a situation. It's intended to gather enough data to get GW ready to be applied on a global scale. So, to do this test, they think of a really complicated event, the Shadow Moses incident, and try to essentially recreate it. They pick a soldier called Raiden, who they've been manipulating for years, as the hero, and manipulate Solidus into acting as the villain. The whole Big Shell incident is supposed to recreate Shadow Moses. A Big Boss clone takes control of an offshore facility with the help of some cool super soldiers to gain control of a new superweapon, and a US soldier goes in to stop him. Everyone in Shadow Moses has a parallel to test whether GW can control everything to go down the same way it did 4 years before. So, with no idea he's being manipulated, Solidus Snake takes over Big Shell with the help of the Russian mercenaries from the tanker incident and a super soldier group called Dead Cell. They take the new president as a hostage and plant explosives around the base. Even though he's worked for them for years, Solidus has no idea that the Patriots are all AIs and not human leaders. So he wants to figure out their identities from GW and then hunt them down, now that they've turned against him. He plans to give Arsenal gear to Dead Cell so that they can distract the Patriots while he's hunting them. Ocelot is working with Solidus too, but he's also a double agent taking orders from the Patriots. Plus, he can cause extra chaos to advance his own goals via his Liquid personality. Raiden infiltrates Big Shell with advice from a Patriot-created AI construction of Colonel Campbell, which he thinks is the real guy, and his ex-girlfriend Rosemary, who's really been an agent of the Patriots for as long as he's known her. Raiden gradually makes his way through Big Shell, confronting members of Dead Cell and disarming the explosives planted by Solidus. He encounters a new cyborg ninja, Olga Gurlukovich, who the Patriots have manipulated into being there by abducting her baby. He also meets another intruder, Solid Snake, calling himself Iroquois Pliskin. Remember, the Patriots think Solid is dead, so he's a variable that's messing up their simulation a bit. Because of this, the AI Campbell tries to discourage Raiden from working with Snake, but Raiden doesn't really listen. He gradually learns more and more about the Patriots and Solidus from both Solid Snake and the new US president, one of Solidus's hostages. Ocelot kills the new president in front of Raiden to imitate the death of Donald Anderson at Shadow Moses. Raiden rescues Emma Emmerich, who's created a virus to destroy GW, but she ends up getting stabbed by a Dead Cell member named Vamp and dies. Eventually, Raiden and Snake upload the virus, and the AI kernel starts glitching out. Raiden realizes there is way more going on than he thought. Rose reveals she's an agent of the Patriots too, but she accidentally fell in love with him for real and is pregnant with his baby. Revelation after revelation here, but we are just getting started. After Raiden fights 30 Metal Gear Rays, Solidus explains his true intentions, but Ocelot reveals himself as a double agent for the Patriots. He explains what he thinks S3 is, the Solid Snake simulation. He thinks the goal of recreating the Shadow Moses incident was to turn Raiden into the perfect soldier, just like Solid Snake. To be clear, he's wrong. It's not about perfecting Raiden, it's about using Raiden to perfect GW, but he is sort of on the right track. Now at this point you might be wondering, didn't GW get wrecked by Emma's virus? Well, that's part of the plan too. The virus didn't completely destroy it, and the Patriots are somehow able to salvage its information to incorporate in their other AIs. Ocelot is possessed by Liquid yet again, and he reveals that he leaked the info that brought Solid Snake to Big Shell, messing with the S3 simulation. He sets Arsenal Gear to collide with Manhattan, then swims away in a Metal Gear Ray. After Arsenal Gear crashes, Raiden and Solidus end up on top of Federal Hall, and the AI kernel explains the real meaning of the S3 plan. Despite all of Liquid's meddling, the operation was still a success, and GW is finally complete. He orders Raiden to kill Solidus for the Patriots, threatening to kill Rose and their unborn baby if he doesn't. So Raiden reluctantly finishes off Solidus in a cool as fuck sword fight and reunites with Rose. It's not clear when, but at some point the exact goals of the Patriot AIs changed. Rather than pursuing Zero's goal of peace through control, they want control through warfare. So, over the next few years, they create the war economy, a state of constant worldwide conflict, with no ideology, only violence and profit. Private military companies become hugely lucrative. In this new economy, all soldiers are injected with nanomachines that allow their leaders to control the soldiers' emotions. This nanomachine system is called the Sons of the Patriots, or SOP. The Patriots can now control both the economy and the individual soldiers via SOP, gaining enough control to influence pretty much any event worldwide. The Patriots have way more power than ever, so to fight them, Ocelot, now fully controlled by his Liquid persona, takes control of the 5 largest military companies in the world, calling his mother company that unites them Outer Heaven. His goal here is to manipulate Snake into destroying the Patriots and freeing the world, but we'll get to the details of that in a second. Thanks to intentional defects in the cloning process, Snake is rapidly aging. He was bred as a soldier, so I guess the original Patriots didn't think he needed to live very long. But in 2014, Colonel Campbell recruits him for one final mission: to stop Liquid Ocelot. Liquid is plunging the world into deeper war, but the people in power don't care, because the war makes them money. Nobody else is willing to challenge Outer Heaven. The Patriots know this and expect Snake to fight Liquid for them. So, with support from Otacon and his now adopted daughter Sunny, Snake heads into the Middle East. Guns nowadays can't be used unless you have nanomachines to activate them, so Snake gets injected by an arms dealer named Drebin. Drebin is secretly a Patriot agent, so he also injects Snake with a new form of Fox dye that will kill any remaining Patriot founder: Eva, Ocelot, Big Boss, or Zero. Snake reunites with Meryl and encounters Liquid's Beauty and the Beast unit, soldiers with robot suits who use the codenames of elite Foxhound operatives from Shadow Moses. He also properly meets Johnny Sasaki, a genome soldier who's been in love with Meryl since Shadow Moses. Liquid manages to disable the SOP system of his soldiers in the area, but the sudden rush of repressed emotions causes them all to lose their minds. Liquid doesn't have enough control of the SOP system yet, for reasons that I'll get to in a bit. After this test, Liquid escapes, so Snake heads to South America to rescue Naomi Hunter from another one of Liquid's bases. Liquid forced Naomi to help him control SOP, since her original Fox dye technology was used as the basis for the SOP nanomachines. Snake finds Naomi with codec help from Rose, who's now split up with Raiden again due to his PTSD and alcoholism. She has a fake marriage with Campbell so that he can protect her from the Patriots, but Meryl doesn't know that it's a sham, and she thinks her dad/uncle is just kind of a creep. Anyways, Naomi tells Snake why he's aging so fast, and also mentions that his old Fox dye from Shadow Moses has mutated. Soon, it'll start killing anyone around him, not just its original targets. He's only got a few months before he becomes a deadly bioweapon. She finds another Fox dye strain in him too, and Snake suspects it's from Drebin. After an attack from Liquid's allies, Snake and Naomi escape, with help from Raiden, who's now a cyborg after being forcibly experimented on by the Patriots. The Patriots have Big Boss's body, so they've set his DNA as the key to controlling SOP. So for Liquid to take control, he needs the body. He's already tried both Liquid's and Solid's DNA, but they didn't give enough control since they're imperfect clones. So he goes to steal Big Boss's body in Eastern Europe. Snake goes after him and meets Eva, aka Big Mama, his surrogate mother. She explains that Big Boss isn't dead, and that he's been kept just barely alive by nanomachines for 15 years. Everyone has a big fight over the body, and Eva ends up dead. Naomi also starts working with Liquid again, for reasons I'll try to explain later, and Otacon's really sad about it, because they slept together in between missions. Liquid gets the DNA he needs, and after testing to prove it works, burns the body. Now, nobody knows this except Eva, but the body they're really fighting over isn't Big Boss, it's Solidus. He's a near-perfect clone, so the DNA matches and works, but Eva's reconstructed the real Big Boss using body parts from Liquid and Solidus and hidden him somewhere. He's still unconscious though due to the nanomachines, so he doesn't matter just yet. Okay, let's go over Liquid Ocelot's plan at this point. Everyone thinks he wants to take control of SOP for himself, but he actually wants to destroy it, freeing the world from the Patriots' control, while plunging the world into utter chaos to fulfill Big Boss's dream of constant battle. Both the Liquid and the Ocelot persona seem to share that same goal, but Liquid's the one in charge for now. He has the DNA key for SOP, but the main Patriot AI, called JD, is still in charge of everything. So, to destroy the Patriots, he leaves himself two potential options. 1. He salvages the wreckage of GW from the Manhattan incident and rebuilds it. If he can destroy JD, control of SOP will pass over to GW, so that he can use GW to deactivate it. But his other option, an even better one, is to get Snake to just destroy the Patriots for him. This is why Ocelot created the Liquid personality in the first place. He knows that the Patriots will manipulate Snake into fighting him, repeating that same pattern they've observed in Shadow Moses and Big Shell. So Liquid lures Snake out of retirement, hoping that he'll succeed and destroy the AIs. We'll see the specifics of how that works in a bit. But even if Snake loses, Liquid can still use his other plan and just destroy JD himself. But he needs a way to do it, and a way to draw Snake after him some more. So he heads to Shadow Moses to recover Metal Gear Rex's powerful railgun, which he can fire at the satellite that houses JD. Snake follows him there and meets Naomi again, so let's talk about her quick. When first working for Liquid Ocelot, she created a computer virus called Fox Alive that could destroy the Patriots, but she couldn't figure out how to finish it herself and needed Otacon's help. So she defected, or pretended to defect at least, to get close to Hal. But she met Sonny and decided to instead entrust the world-saving virus to a 7-year-old. Then she went back to Liquid, but it's not totally clear why. Maybe it's because she cared about Liquid's ally Vamp, or maybe it was just to keep an eye on Liquid. I don't know for sure. Anyways, after Snake kills Vamp, Naomi hears from Raiden that Sonny managed to complete Fox Alive using pieces from Emma Emmerich's old GW virus. So, with her work complete, Naomi reveals that she's been dying of cancer anyways and commits suicide by turning off the nanomachines that have been keeping her alive. By this point, Liquid's already taken the railgun, but Snake takes control of Rex and has a cool mech fight with Liquid's Metal Gear Ray. Snake wins, and Liquid pretends to be dying from Fox Die again as a little joke because he's a drama queen. Ocelot escapes to a stolen Arsenal gear he's calling Outer Haven, setting the stage for the final act. Snake infiltrates Outer Haven with help from Meryl and Johnny Sasaki, who get engaged during the mission. How cute. A heavily injured Raiden shows up too, and protects Snake while he crawls through a microwave-filled corridor designed to harm anyone trying to access GW. Snake barely makes it through and uploads Fox Alive, which spreads from GW to the other AIs, destroying both SOP and the Patriots once and for all. Snake passes out, and Liquid drags him to the top of Outer Haven for one final duel. Liquid explains some of his plan, then challenges Snake to a fistfight. Over the course of the battle, his Ocelot personality starts to resurface for the first time in years. Once Snake defeats Liquid Ocelot, Liquid fades away, and Ocelot dies to Drebin's Fox Die virus. Afterwards, Otacon explains that Ocelot's plan didn't go exactly how he expected, thanks to Sonny. She altered Fox Alive so that rather than eliminating the AI entirely, it only destroyed the Patriots' control, while leaving behind the systems that are essential to modern civilization, like the ones that manage resources and communication. Thanks to her, the constant war of Liquid Ocelot's Outer Heaven won't come to pass, and humanity will be able to recover and live freely. With the crisis finally over, Meryl and Johnny get married, Meryl and Campbell bury the hatchet, and Raiden and Rose reunite happily along with their son John. Snake, meanwhile, goes to Big Boss's grave to commit suicide, preventing his mutated Fox Die from killing everyone. But when he can't go through with it, Big Boss appears, having woken up from his nanomachine coma after the AIs were destroyed. He embraces Snake and tells him to put aside the gun and live. He explains how he's still alive, that Ocelot was never truly possessed, and that he managed to find the comatose Zero as the Patriots collapsed. Big Boss pulls the plug on Zero's life support, making himself the last remaining founder of the Patriots. He also tells Snake a message from Naomi, explaining that the Patriot-killing Fox Die from Drebin has replaced Snake's original Fox Die, so he doesn't have to worry about the mutating strain anymore. But now that Snake and his father are together, Drebin's Fox Die is quickly killing Big Boss. He asks Snake to help him to the boss's grave, where he salutes her just as he did 50 years earlier. Now he finally understands why she was willing to sacrifice herself in the name of peace. He shares one final smoke with Snake, telling him that he's now free from the shackles of fate, before finally passing on. With the legacy of the boss finally coming to a close, Snake decides to live out his final days peacefully with Otacon, his greatest friend. Boyfriend. Excuse me, something stuck in my throat. And that draws the story of Metal Gear to a close. As profound as it is messy, it's an ambitious work that I absolutely love. I hope I helped you see some of its beauty too. Thanks for watching.